Coming to you live from Medellin Wellness Center here in Colombia, this is the Fredcast, and I'm your host, Fred Busch. So, welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Fredcast. As usual, I am extremely happy and excited to be here with you guys to discuss these topics that I find to be super important and hopefully helpful to you in your daily life. Today, as always, we're going to talk about something that's come up in the news related to health and wellness. We're going to talk today as well about the subject of fruit and the myth that fruit has too much sugar. We're also going to talk today about the living enlightenment of not taking things personally in our daily life. And as usual, we're going to close this session with a question and answer and a discussion or a chapter from my favorite book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. All right, so let's get started. Today I've read an article about in the medical news journal, something along those lines, that even a short-term increase in fiber intake will have a very, very valuable impact on our gut biome. For those of you who don't know what the gut biome is, although it has been receiving a lot of quote-unquote press lately, this is the community of what we call good bacteria, or we could call it probiotic bacteria, that exists in our intestinal tract, in our stomachs, that is responsible for many things and many functions, and really is, to some degree, an intelligence in and of its own. I mean, I've heard it described that the gut biome is like a 5-pound alien living inside of us. It's a completely different set of organisms that are all communicating, coordinating, and producing all these different factors of that are extremely important for us as human beings. We don't live in isolation here on this planet. We live in what's called symbiosis, and we are in symbiosis with many organisms. But I think our most important symbiotic relationships are with these gut bacteria. And so in order to promote this, what we call a healthy biome, there's been a lot of discussion on the effect that different diets have. And it's been widely circulated that people that have a diverse and strong colony of probiotic bacteria in their gut are healthier and more robust, and especially the immune system. In fact, I actually heard one time about, it might have been 18, almost 20 years ago, possibly I was giving a discussion or a talk on food in my old yoga studio. So we're probably talking about 2001, 2002 in those days. And I was talking about the relationship between food and well-being. And in attendance to that meeting was a heart surgeon. And so he listened to the whole talk, and because I think he was the husband of one of my students, so he had come as a guest to listen to the lecture. And so he heard the whole lecture. It went about 2 hours talking about food and what is food and the whole thing. And of course I was talking about more raw foods are better and cooked foods are not as good. But at the end of the talk, he comes up to me and he says, "Wow, Fred, I really did appreciate everything that you had to say, and I thought that it was extremely accurate and well done. But I'd like you to be aware of one thing." And he said, from my experience in opening up people's bodies, so that we're talking now about someone who literally looks inside of bodies, as a heart surgeon, he's doing dissections and not dissections, but he's doing surgeries, and he's seeing the living human being from the inside. He said that in his experience, what he has observed is that the most important factor is the gut biome. It's the colony of bacteria that we have living inside of our intestines and our gut. And he said that by far is the number one factor in terms of people's health and in terms of people's well-being. And he was saying that to me over 20 years ago. Well, anyway, today's article says that even a short-term increase in the amount of fiber that you eat will have a huge effect on the beneficial gut bacteria in your body. Now, I thought that was interesting because a lot of times people they don't want to change because they think like, well, what's the point? Like if I only do just this little bit, then it really wouldn't matter because I've been living my whole life this way, and how is just a small change going to make a significant difference? But what this article is pointing out is that even a short-term change in the amount of fiber that we're eating. Now, of course, when we say fiber, we're talking about that which comes from fruits and that which comes from vegetables, because those are the only foods that have fiber. Meats and flesh foods and dairy foods, those are all fiberless by their very nature. And so it was saying that you don't have to change for 10 years to get a benefit, but that really within a few weeks or even a few months possibly, upon eating more fiber, eating more fruit, eating more vegetables, things that are fiber containing, that alone will begin a very significant and very positive beneficial impact on your gut biome, which will then in turn have a very positive and very beneficial impact on your overall health. So, I guess the point of me bringing up this article for this week was that, I think it's true with all kinds of things that we do in our life where we say, oh, it's not worth it if we take a small step. But the fact is, it's always worth it to take a small step, because the first step that we take is the most important step. And, unlike our belief systems which say that, oh, if we don't do it for 20 years, then what's the point? This article is suggesting that really, in the same way that as soon as you stop smoking cigarettes, the lungs begin to repair themselves like the next day. Well, as soon as you start to eat more fiber and you start to, improve the nature of your diet, that the beneficial effects are going to take place directly, and that there's not a long wait and there's not a long delay between when you're eating a bit more alignment to our biology and when you're going to get the results of being healthier and more robust in your immune system. And the whole theme of this podcast is about the immune system. I wrote my book, my latest book, the Medellin Wellness Protocol, which should be available on Amazon any day now. I know it's been available for pre-order, but I think that the printed copies are just about to come off the press. It's all about the immune system. Even these vaccines, what are these vaccines about? These vaccines are about, well, we want to get these vaccines to help you stimulate your immune system too. So, to me, this is the most important information, which is that small things that we do in the right direction have a very, very outsized impact on our health outcomes. All right, so now we're going to get into our myth of the week, our nutritional myth of the week, and I chose this one because it's actually quite related to this article about fiber, which is the myth that I don't know if it's so common. I'm not sure how these myths become so common. I guess there's just very impressive marketing campaigns and misinformation campaigns out there. But in this case, the myth is that fruit has too much sugar. You ever heard that one before? Fruit has too much sugar, that you shouldn't eat fruit at night, or that you should limit your fruit intake because it has too much sugar. And so I just wanted to tackle that because in my view and from my experience and as well as the experience of my teachers, there really is nothing more important for us to consume than fruit. In fact, there is no way to consume too much fruit because fruit is the most beneficial food that we can eat as human beings. it is the food that is most aligned to our biology. It is the food that is most perfect for us as primates, since that's the category of species that we fall under, which is, it's called primates. I'm sure you know there's different kinds of classifications of primates. They're what are called monkeys, and they're what are called apes. The difference, of course, is that monkeys have tails and apes do not have tails. And so we fit nice and neatly into the category of the great apes, along with the chimpanzees, the gibbon, the orangutan, the mountain gorilla, and those guys. And so we're right there in that family. We are what are called primate. We have the same digestive system that they do. And so they are fruit eaters, and so we are fruit eaters. Now, I'm not suggesting that I eat 100% fruit and that I don't eat anything else. That would certainly not be true. But I can say that I do consume as much fruit as I possibly can. My goal is to eat 30 to 50 pieces of fruit a day. I don't just necessarily eat the fruit. Oftentimes I'll blend the fruit and make a smoothie out of it. But you see, by blending it as opposed to juicing it, then I get all of the fiber, which leads us back to that last article that we just read about the benefits of fiber. So, does fruit have too much sugar? Absolutely not. In order to understand this scientifically, you really need to understand that people are using the same word to describe two completely different things. It's like, for example, what do I mean? I mean that people are willing to use the word sugar to describe what they find in a cookie or a candy bar. But they're also willing to use the word sugar to describe what's inside of a fruit that has not been cooked. Well, that's exactly like me showing you a horse and then showing you a caterpillar and me using the same word to describe both of those things, and say, oh, this is a horse, and then I show you a caterpillar and say, oh, well, this is also a horse. But you would say, well, that certainly doesn't look like it's the same thing. One, looks like it's big and has hair and I could ride it maybe, and it eats hay, and the other thing lives in the ground and it has 100 legs and it's not even a mammal. So why are you calling them both a horse? Well, that's the same thing as calling the molecule that's found in a candy bar sugar, and using the same word to describe what's in a fruit, which I think most anybody would say is just unreasonable, to say the least. And to say the most, we could say it's unscientific. It's just so funny, and I don't know if it's funny, it's actually kind of tragic, how people are using scientific terminology to really use and to misinform us. And this is a perfect example with the idea that fruit has too much sugar. You see, there's different kinds of sugars. Now, of the natural type of sugars, and of course, when we say sugar, we're also talking about carbohydrate. Now, the natural kinds of sugars that exist out there are fructose, found in fruit. There is glucose, found in vegetables, and there is galactose, found in milk. Of course, we're talking about the mother's milk, from a mother giving milk to her own baby of her own species. Now, those are the three types of sugars that are existing naturally, and those are what are called simple sugars. Well, those are all biologically have value. Of course, when you're an infant, you need the sugar from your mom's milk. And vegetables have glucose, and if we use effort and we produce insulin properly, and we can integrate the glucose into our cells with the insulin, then we can derive energy out of glucose as well. Although that's we need a bit of a middleman with that. That's called insulin. But of course, the fructose coming from the fruits that have not been cooked is our primary fuel. I mean, literally our primary fuel. You have 100 trillion or more cells, and they're all hungry, and they're all looking for energy. And the energy that our human cells are looking for is the energy that's coming from fruit. That's the fructose molecule. Nothing feeds our brain better. Nothing feeds the cells of our body better than fructose. It is not possible to eat too much fruit because the body has mechanisms for satiation when you're eating natural food. In other words, if you're eating a meal of fruit and you continue to eat fruit, like let's say, for example, I'm really hungry, I'm gonna have one banana. Well, I'm still really hungry. I'm going to have 2 bananas. Well, now I'm still hungry. I'm going to have my third banana. Well, after my third banana, I'm not quite as hungry, but you know what? I can still stuff down a fourth banana. Well, after I stuff down that fourth banana, I don't know that I ever want to look at another banana again for at least another couple hours, because at that point, my body is telling me enough is enough. I've had enough bananas. In other words, my body has a natural mechanism for satiation, of which it just will not allow me to eat more. And that's extremely different from what happens when we eat this other molecule that's also called sugar. There's these complex carbohydrates, the reduced sugars. When you cook a sugar, and you refine it, you're basically taking away all the minerals and all the vitamins and all the phytonutrients and everything good out of it, and you're only leaving the fuel part, and then you're cooking it, and that's why it's called complex carbohydrate. And these are the denser foods. These are the white sugars and including the pastas and the breads. These are all kind of similar category here of what happens when you complicate the carbohydrate by reducing it in a context of fire or cooking it. Well, when we do that, the body's mechanisms for satiation are definitely not going to function as well. And it's very easy for us to overeat, and it's very easy for us to gain weight. And so this is kind of the process, is that we're eating highly dense foods that are really not natural to our biology, and these complex carbohydrates. And in doing so, we are eating too many calories. And in doing that, we have a tendency to gain weight. But that cannot happen with fruit, because fructose is a simple sugar. And as a simple sugar, your body is designed for it, which means that you cannot have too much fruit. You cannot eat too many smoothies that are full of fruit. Now remember, don't ever add added sugar into a smoothie, something that they do a lot in South America, which has always mystified me. They'll make a beautiful smoothie with nice juices and fresh fruit, and then they'll add a couple of spoonfuls of white refined sugar. Obviously, I'm not speaking about doing that. But the more fruit that you eat, the healthier you're going to be. The more fruit you eat, the more fiber you're going to get. The more fiber you're going to get, the healthier your gut biome is going to be. And so that's just the relation to that article that we were reading. But, fruit is much bigger than that. Fruit contains things that have never been studied because they can't be studied. In order for a scientist to study something, they have to be able to extract it. They have to be able to isolate it. They have to be able to take away all the variables. And they have to be able to find something that is stable inside of a test tube. Well, the most valuable components and the most valuable factors that are in fruit you cannot do that. You cannot take the phytonutrients out of a fruit and keep them and isolate them and study them in the same way that it would be inside of the fruit, because it's different. It's out of context, and it behaves differently. And so these are things that have never been studied really properly, that are all in fruit, and these are the magical properties. These are the anti-mutagenic, anti-carcinogenic, which means anti-cancer, factors that are found in the fruit kingdom, and to some degree the vegetable kingdom, but we are really fruit eaters, everybody. We are not salad eaters. We are primates. We are not herbivores. We are not giraffe. We are not elephants. We are not cows. We are not deer, and we don't look like them either. I guess, when you really want to insult somebody as badly as you can insult somebody, you'd say, oh, that person looks like a cow, which means that they're overweight and they're not attractive. That's one of the most cruel insults that you can have. But do you really look like a cow? I mean, no matter what. No, of course not. You never are going to look like a cow. You want to know why? Because you're not. Because you're not an herbivore. All right. We're not salad eaters by nature. We're not vegetable eaters by nature. We are fruit eaters by nature. And anybody who says that you could eat too much fruit, or that fruit is not good, or that you shouldn't give too much fruit to children, or that you shouldn't eat fruit at night, or wants to put any restrictions at all on your fruit intake, these are people that are not in the know. These are people that are not aware of really who we are. Maybe they think we're some outlier species that somehow just landed on Earth, and we have no relationship to the rest of nature, and that we don't belong to a category of mammals that we do. But obviously, I would imagine that with a little bit of introspection and a little bit of contemplation, that anybody with some sense would recognize that's just impossible. Okay, that we could not have come from nowhere, and that we are primates, and as a result, we have a dietary that is ideal for us. Now, like I said, I don't suggest you eat 100% fruit unless you have a disease or unless you have a set of symptomology that's very serious, and then you want to heal that. And if you do want to heal from a serious symptomology, a nervous system issue, a cancer issue, even a diabetes, heart disease, well, in heart disease can be handled without eating 100% fruit, but some of these other things, no, they really do require a period of time of eating 100% fruit, so that the body can kind of reset itself in its own way. Okay, so please, everybody, these myths, to me, I'm tackling them one at a time because they are so devastating. I don't know that there's anything more egregious than giving misinformation about what a person's supposed to eat. Because what a person's supposed to eat is so fundamental to their well-being and so fundamental to their mental health, to their physiological health, and of course to their immune system. All right, so let's everyone stop believing this myth about fruit not being the most important thing you could eat. Now, if someone wants to ask me, well, what's the best fruit? Well, the best fruits are grapes. The best fruits are the berries. But you know what? That's not really necessarily true, because the best fruit is the fruit that you have. The best fruit is the fruit that grows wherever you live. The best fruit is the fruit that you can have access to, because all fruits are superfoods. And I mean that. All fruits are superfoods. Certain foods have been given this reputation of being a superfood. Well, that's marketing. That's a human being trying to sell a product. And in order to sell a product, they're going to tout how powerful and how beneficial the components are. And when they describe that with fruit, the pomegranate, they say it's a superfood. You know what? They're right. They are superfoods. They are. Anytime someone wants to describe a fruit or a berry as a superfood, they're 100% right. But what's important to understand is that it's not just that. Every fruit is a superfood, because every fruit is something that has been made by nature or made by God, however you want to look at that, and has components, has factors, has attributes that are really and truly beyond our capacity to comprehend. And I say that in a beneficial way. It's kind of like they're magic. It's a combination of a little energy pack, mixed with a magic assortment of properties that are all designed to help you and to help you prevent disease. My goal is twofold. It's, of course, to always help people that have symptomology, to help them unravel that. That's why I've created the Medellin Wellness Center here in Colombia, to give people a chance to, operate with the Dr. Morse system, which is 100% fruit-based healing system. And so, that's my goal. But my other goal as well is prevention. And in fact, I might say that prevention is a more important goal than cure, because prevention is better than cure. I mean, how many people do you know would rather get a diagnosis and then have to heal themselves from that diagnosis? They would rather have that than they would prevent it from ever happening in the first place. Well, maybe theoretically people say, oh, well, I'd rather prevent it. But, behaviorally, that's not really true, because behaviorally, no one's really doing what they have to do to prevent things. And prevention really doesn't get the kind of credit that it deserves, because, if I help you prevent your cancer because I coached you on how to eat when you were 30 and you ate like that for 30 years, whereas other people didn't get coached like that when they were 30 and they ate their regular diet for those 30 years, and I prevented the cancer, I'm not going to get credit for the prevention, because how would you know that I helped you prevent that? And so prevention kind of, it's kind of a difficult thing to market, right? Because how can you prove that you prevented something? But I don't really care if I get credit or don't get credit. What I care about is preventing your disease manifestation, preventing symptomology, preventing suffering, preventing your family from suffering, preventing your family from having to get a diagnosis that mom has cancer or dad has cancer. This is devastating, and it can be prevented in 80% or more of the cases if we understood these factors of our lifestyle. And of course, that's the whole point of my book, the Medi and Wellness Protocol. It's the 5 fundamental factors to strengthen your immune system, which is also the 5 fundamental factors to prevent, disease and to prevent symptomology. And just to review that, everybody, it's how do we eat? And of course, I'm now saying, as I will always say, eat more fruit and eat less animal foods at all times. How do you exercise? I'm going to suggest yoga or brisk walking or swimming every single day. How are we using our mind? Are we our worst enemy, or are we our best friend? Are we using awareness to positively impact our life? How are we resting? In other words, are we deprived of our sleep? Because nothing will suppress your immune system other than alcohol, as much as sleep deprivation or being exhausted all the time. And then the final factor here is how are we living more or less organically? In other words, are we exposing ourselves to toxins in our skin that get absorbed into our blood, that become, obstacles into our internal organs, whether it's a perfume or it's a hairspray or it's a spray in the bathroom, or what toxic paint, and we're not using gloves. So okay. So those are the 5 fundamental factors, and that's going to help us either prevent or heal ourselves. And so bottom line is, everyone, that fruit is the king. Fruit is the best thing you can eat, and to begin to let go of this mythology and this misinformation that fruit has too much sugar. All right, so let's get into our next section here, which is on using the skills that we learn in yoga and we learn in the spiritual texts and from spiritual masters, and how do we employ that stuff into our daily life. I call it living enlightened. And so today's topic is going to be on taking things personally. I think that, this is something that I might be a very good person to explain it, but it doesn't not mean that I am perfect in practice. I'm not sure it's even possible to be absolutely perfect in the practice that I'm going to describe, but we all need to work on it. We all need to apply it, and we all need to be aware of the importance of not taking things personally in our life. Now let's define what it means when we take something personally. So we're interacting with somebody, or there is an interaction, and somebody ends up hurting us either emotionally or psychologically, or they're insulting us, or they're doing something that puts us down, or does any number of things that we feel is compromising our status in the society or in our own mind, and so we feel insulted. We feel like they have done that to hurt us. We are, in other words, taking it personally. Now, in order to kind of realize why it is not really even valid to take things personally, is to first realize that, when we are taking something personally, what it means is that we believe that the reason why the person has done what they have done is to hurt us. Okay, so we are experiencing a relationship, and in that relationship, we are maybe getting hurt, or we are perceiving that we have been hurt, well, as I said, psychologically, emotionally, and then we interpret that as they have done it to us with an intention to hurt us, as if we are part of the calculation inside this person's mind as to why they did it. In other words, they did something, and the reason why they did it was to hurt us, as if they were thinking about us the whole time, as if we are the center of that person's universe. Which I think, as you hear me say that, you can start to realize, wow, well, that's probably not even true. It's probably not true that the person is constantly thinking only about me when they're going through what they're going through. And I think that one of the best kind of examples of appreciating why not to take things personally is, to realize that everyone is working with their own resources as best they can. And a lot of times people have very limited resources. Now, when I mean resources, I mean a lot of times psychological resources. I'm talking about, emotional balance. I'm talking about, intelligence. I'm talking about sensitivity. I'm talking about things that a lot of people are in short supply of. And so people are limited in their resources, and so they are operating, perhaps on a lower level, and then they're doing things that end up hurting you, right? As a result, and then of course you take it personally, thinking that they did it to hurt you, but really it was because of their limited resources. And so let me give you an example of this. This is an example for, which is a true example, but it's also a metaphor, for other scenarios. I once knew a friend who worked in a home for psychologically disadvantaged people, or children, I should say, from the ages of 5 to 18. It was like one of those boarding homes for children that did not have a family that was able to take care of them, and they had psychological limitations, or autisms, or any number of things whereby they were not operating at the level that their age would have suggested. And so every day my friend would go to work, and in this place that he worked, there was a very very large male 17-year-old who was, I guess you could say, a patient, or resident of this center, and this guy, this 17-year-old guy, or boy, or whatever you want to describe him, he had the mentality of maybe an 8-year-old. I think is more or less it, and it was very imbalanced mentally. So every day, my friend would come to work, and this guy, this 17-year-old kid, would run up to him, to give him a greeting, really give him a very enthusiastic greeting. Except that the enthusiasm could go in either one of two directions. Either this kid would come up and give him a giant hug, and be very happy, and really enthusiastic to see him, or he would come up the same way with the same enthusiasm and then just simply punch my friend in the face as hard as he could. Now imagine someone who's 250 pounds punching you in the face every day. Now, obviously, if someone were going to walk up to you and just in the street and punch you in the face, well, I think most of us inherently would maybe take it personally, say, "Hey, well, why'd you do that?" Or even more aggressive in the anger, about something like that. Well, here's a situation where somebody does not have all of their mental faculties, and as a result of that is acting violently. Now, as a result of someone who does not have their mental faculties acting violently towards you, is it really appropriate for you to take it personally? I mean, would it really be appropriate for my friend to get really angry at this kid for punching him when the kid did not know that what he was doing was right or wrong, because he didn't have the capacity to know that? Well, I think we all could recognize that, in the same way that we don't blame a 2-year-old for, doing something that might have, hurt us or, anything like that, we would not blame this kid for punching us in the face, because he just doesn't know any better. He can't do better. You cannot ask somebody with a mentality of an 8-year-old to act like he has the mentality of an 18-year-old, because he just physically can't. And that's really what's happening in the world around us. These people that are hurting us emotionally or hurting us psychologically or insulting us or doing things that we take personally, and we take it to heart like that. These are not people that are doing it to hurt us. They're doing it because they can't do better. And the idea that they're thinking about us, in why they have chosen to do what they did that ended up hurting us at the end of the day, is really just a matter of our ego. Okay, and our ego, which of course wants to believe that we are the center of everybody's universe and that everybody is doing everything that they can because we're the center of their constellation and they're doing it for us or to us or because we're there. That's how the ego wants to see it. The ego would love that, for us to be that important for everybody, that everyone's doing what they do in order for it to affect us one way or the other. That's simply not the facts. I think that maybe through your own experience, you might be aware that, you looking through your own eyes and you're in your own world and you're doing things for your own reasons and you have your own calculations and you have your own limitations and you're suffering from your own pain and you have your own obstacles. And that's why you do what you do. Because of the environment that you're in. If someone's drowning in a whirlpool of water, and as a result they're drowning and they're flailing around in this whirlpool because they are in a very difficult environment for themselves and they don't know how to handle it, and they cannot escape it. Because they, again, don't have the resources, right? They don't have a boat, they don't have a rope, they don't have a life jacket, they don't have anything, and they're drowning, and they're desperate, and they're flailing, and you happen to, swim on by this whirlpool, and they're drowning in it, and they smack you in the face as you swim by. Well, you can't say that they smacked you in the face because they wanted to hurt you. Because that's just simply not the case. They smacked you in the face because they were going through a situation whereby they were in a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of desperation, and they were facing a set of environmental factors that was very challenging for them. And in some cases they were able to, maybe manage them successfully, but in most cases they're not. And as a result, things, that maybe that you would not have done in a similar situation, well, that's fine. But guess what? You are not in that situation. You are not in their shoes. And when I say in their shoes, I don't just mean in their shoes, I mean in their brain. You didn't have their limited level of intelligence. You didn't have their limited level of emotional balance. You didn't have their, limited nutrition, which also affects the brain. And so I think that the best, of course, is to have what we call compassion. The antidote to not taking things personally is to have compassion. When someone comes after me, emotionally or psychologically, or, all these people online, these trolls, these people that are attacking everybody all the time, and, and they just want to make everyone suffer, right? That seems to be their goal, you know what I mean? Hurt people and do this and do that. Well, when someone comes after me like that, I don't take it personally. Instead of taking it personally and getting angry at the person and it's not like I'm gonna continue my exposure or allow them to continue to hurt me. No. But instead of that, I really often have an attitude that says, wow, wow how much pain you must be in order to come after and attack me like that. the degree of suffering that you must be experiencing is so extreme that the only thing I can feel is compassion. I'm not going to get angry at somebody who themselves is suffering, and as they are suffering, they're lashing out and they're being, doing what could be called negative things, and I'm not going to tolerate it in my life, but I'm also not going to take it personally because this is a person who is fighting their own battle. I think maybe some people have heard that before, right? Hey, have compassion for the person next to you. Everyone, it's a paraphrase, everyone that you meet is fighting a great battle. I almost cry when I say that because it's so true. We're all fighting a great battle. We all have been traumatized. We've all had our obstacles. We're all continually, trying to exist in 2020, 2021, time on this earth, which is full of all kinds of dynamic challenges, and some people just aren't up to the challenge because, again, to start from the beginning, they just don't have the resources. Now, what are resources? Resources are yoga. Resources are meditation. Resources are better nutrition. Resources are awareness. Now, the resource that nobody can help is intelligence. And of course, that's something that can mean many things, but it is a resource. And emotional intelligence is an aspect of that, which means your ability to see things in context and not to take things out of context, which I think is always what we're doing when we take things personally. So how do you do it, everybody? You use awareness. You recognize when somebody is coming after you in some sort of an attack in any number of dimension. And you can neutralize it. You can leave the situation, or you can, talk to the person and explain to them that you're not going to accept treatment like that anymore. You can end the relationship. You can do many things. But what you don't want to do is take it personally. And what you don't want to do is have anger in your body, because anger in your body as a result of taking things personally is only going to hurt you. Remember, every single thought you have has a biochemical relationship to hormonal production and all these other aspects of physiological health, immune system suppression, anxiety and stress, lack of sleep, all coming from where? Coming from your thoughts. And your thoughts, of course, come from your interpretation of reality. And so that, of course, comes from your understanding of really what's going on out there. And if you believe that people are doing things to hurt you because your ego thinks that you're the center of the universe and that people are only caring about how their actions can affect you, well, then that's not always so accurate. And better take a step back, realize people are fighting great battles, and that the best protocol here, the best course of action is called compassion, because that is just the rule for suffering people. I mean, why add violence? Why add more negativity? And why create negativity within yourself just because somebody else is hurting, So let's stop taking things personally. Let's kind of take a step back and see the bigger picture and see how people are doing their best, often with extremely limited resources. And nobody can really do better than their resources allow them to do. And so for that reason alone, compassion is the rule. Okay, well, now I'd like to get into a really good question that came from one of the listeners of one of the, I think it probably was the second podcast, episode 2. So I'm going to read the question here, and then I'm going to answer it. All right. Question says, I always thought that protein in your body would stay. I think this is someone responding to my podcast discussing the myth that protein is good for you and that you want to eat more protein. The myth that the more protein that you eat is the better for your health. That was the myth that we were tackling on that episode. And so the question goes, I always thought that protein in your body would stave off hunger and help build muscle. Is that not true? What foods build muscle and prevent you from being hungry? Okay, so I think that's a question that most of you would probably have, and so I thought it was a wonderful question, and let's get right into it. First part of the question is that I always thought that protein in your body would stave off hunger. All right, so let's address that first. It's always good to do one step at a time. And of course, that is totally false. Okay, protein does not stave off hunger. What staves off hunger is fat. All right, now protein is structural. So protein is, and of course, let's first, to review this for people that did not listen to the podcast on protein. Protein really is a word that does not mean anything at all, actually. In fact, people are using the word protein again, kind of like what I was saying the other day, or just now, two different animals and using the same word to describe it. Well, protein really doesn't mean anything. What protein is a construction of amino acids. Okay, so you have amino acids, and these are the quote unquote building blocks and structure of our body. And we receive these amino acids from our diet. There are essential amino acids that we must receive from our diet. There are non-essential amino acids that we could receive from our diet, or that we could receive, or that we could build rather. If we got the first essential ones, we could construct or fabricate or synthesize the non-essentials. Well, these 20 or 22 amino acids in different combinations form protein. You take those 22 amino acids in one combination and you have a chicken. You take the same 22 in different angles and different formations, you have a horse. And the same 22 in different angle and different proportions, you have a human being. So these amino acids are what make protein. And so protein can be anything that is already been constructed by amino acids. But the point is it's structural. It is not satiating. In order to get yourself full, it is not protein, it is fat. But what happens is that fat often comes with protein, and that's why they're associated together. Someone who goes to a steakhouse and eats a big piece of red meat with all that, all the blood and all that stuff in there, and then they're full and they feel that feeling of satiation. It was not the protein in any way that created the satiation. It was the fat inside the meat. It's the butter on your potato. It's the sour cream. It's the cheese. It's these things. This is how we get full. We get full by eating fatty foods. And so you want to be made to feel full, you have to eat foods that have fat in it, not foods that have protein in it. And of course, as I said, a lot of times they come together because these animal products, these animal foods, these flesh foods, which are quote unquote high in protein, they're really high in fat as well. And so this is why people associate eating meat with feeling full, but it has nothing to do with the protein, it has everything to do with the fat inside. So, what's the solution to that? The solution to that is to switch the type of fat that you're eating so that the type of fat that you're eating comes from a plant. And that way you can feel satiated and feel full, but without having to get the types of fats that are inside these animals, these trans fats and these very destructive components that are in the animal flesh foods. That really are destructive to your health, as opposed to the type of fat that comes from the plant kingdom, which is extremely beneficial to your health. Now, what am I talking about mostly? The king of all food is a fruit called the avocado. An avocado is a fruit, and it's a fatty fruit. And anyone who's eaten guacamole knows you eat guacamole, you feel full. Well, you didn't feel full because guacamole has a lot of protein. No, you felt full because guacamole has a lot of fat. Olives have a lot of fat, tahini, things like that. These are foods that are based on fat, and so and of course we're talking about plant fat. Now, whenever you eat fat, you want to have it not be cooked, because if you cook a fat, it becomes rancid and it becomes carcinogenic. And that's true for even the plant fats. The only exception to that is coconut oil, which you can cook it and it does not change its chemical structure. temperature, and it does not become rancid and does not become carcinogenic. And that's why coconut oil is probably the perfect food for us if you have to cook anything with, because an extra virgin olive oil, that kind of thing, that's of course pure fat, because oil and fat are the same thing. Those are just two different words for the same thing. But if you cook it, then you change its chemical composition, and you're always, when you add fire to fat, you create a carcinogen. All right, and so that's true with cooked meats. It's true for cooked plant fats and everything. And of course, look, everything's relative, and eating cooked olive oil is going to be better than eating, a cooked, lard. That's why people stopped using lard a long time ago. But people used to have a thing of lard in their kitchen, and they would just, scoop it out with their fingers and fry it up, and nobody knew any better. Well, now you know that you do that, and that's very destructive to your heart health, and that creates a lot of blockages in the vessels, because cooked fats are quite dangerous for us. So that answers your question. I hope that protein does not fill you up. What fills you up is fat. They are associated, because a lot of times the foods that are considered to be high in protein by those pseudoscientists that like to use that word are also high in fat, and thereby you eat the chicken, or you eat the fish, and you eat the animal flesh, and you feel full, and then you feel like you got full from the protein, or at least you believed that, but it really, at the end of the day, it was you got full from the fat, not the protein. All right, well, let's go on to the next question. I also thought that protein would help build muscle. Okay, well, protein does not build muscle. No, you cannot. Nobody can eat themselves into building muscle. The only way to build muscle is to exercise. The only way to build muscle is to use your muscles. You have to do strength-based activities. You have to use your body. You want to build muscle. You got to do things that would, promote that. And nobody's going to eat themselves into strength, no matter what you eat. So, but I understand the point. And I guess the point is that certain foods, along with exercise, would build bigger muscles. I think that is the idea. Well, number one, bigger muscles are not always better. Bodybuilders and people that are focused on the size of their muscles, they are not healthy people. People that are focused on how much, pre-constructed animal protein and whey and all those things that they could eat, so that when they work out, that their muscles can be extra big. Well, look, if you're a bodybuilder and that's your career, and that's important to you, and you're willing to sacrifice every single thing about your physiology in order to have big muscles, including your sexual capacity, including your kidney functioning, including your cardiovascular health, you're willing to compromise all of that because you want to have big muscles, because you want to win a prize, and that's your career, well, guess what? You have total freedom to do that. You have an intention. You want to be a bodybuilder. You want to be Mr. Universe, and you're going to do it with these foods. And okay. Temporarily eating large amounts of pre-constructed animal proteins, along with steroids and along with working out, will build an extra large muscle, one that's unusually large, and of course it's very temporary. The minute that person stops their workout, to the degree that they were doing, then you really see the result of what happens when someone's trying to eat themselves into big muscles, which is, of course, they turn flabby, and they turn, it becomes really the opposite of what they were looking for. It becomes really a kind of a sad physiological sight, as opposed to an impressive one. And so if you want to build muscle, what you really want is your muscles to work really well. You don't want them to be bigger than their nature. We all have a genetics. We all have a genetic blueprint, and some of us are mesomorphs, which means that we have just bigger muscles by nature, and some of us are not. I'm not. I personally cannot create big muscles in my body. But what I can do is I can have very strong muscles. My muscles might not look big, but they're extremely powerful. I can do a handstand without using a wall. I can do all kinds of things because I'm quite strong physiologically. And why is that? Because I eat things that construct my muscles correctly. I'm eating amino acids that are not cooked. So, in other words, I'm getting my nutritional factors from where I need to, and then with nature, I'm building my body as it is designed to be built for my body and for my nature. And nobody really should be looking for muscle mass as some sort of signal of success on a path of health. So when it comes to not losing muscle tone, that's about exercise, everybody. It's not about eating. Nobody can eat their way into strength. The way to get strong is a combination of intelligent nutrition, meaning fruits, which are full of amino acids. Perhaps the kingdom of the blue-green algae are full of amino acids. We're talking about the spirulinas, the A-phynoxymenon flossaqui, the E3 live, something that I constantly have been using as well. These are full of amino acids and they're raw. That means that they haven't been cooked, they haven't been compromised. Anybody who eats a cooked food, a cooked meat, a cooked chicken, a cooked fish for protein is completely fooling themselves. Nothing cooked is going to really help you create a physiologically sound structure because by the very nature of the cooking process, the chemical composition and the structure has been deranged. So, it's very similar to someone who wants to build a building. And as they build a building, before they build a building, they get all of the construction supplies and all the materials on the site. They've got the pile of wood. They've got all the bricks. They've got everything ready to go. And then they're going to start building the next day. And they've got everything ready and in order. But then the day before they start building, someone comes and they light gasoline over everything. And they literally burn the entire pile of construction material to ashes. I don't know if you've ever seen what happens after a fire, but sometimes wood can burn in a fire, and then after the fire it still looks like wood, because maybe it didn't get knocked down or it didn't get disturbed too much. It just got burned through. It looks like wood, but then you touch it, the whole thing falls apart. That's cooked food. It might look like structure, but you touch it and the whole thing falls apart because it's been burned. And nothing that's been burned is the same as something that hasn't been burned. And no animal on the earth destroys its food before it eats it. No animal on earth destroys its food before it eats it. So we're the only ones that do that. And cooking food is destroying food. And cooking protein is destroying the amino acids. And so you destroy the amino acids, you destroy the capacity to have good structure. And then, people wonder why their physiology degrades and why their aging process is so speedy. Well, because they're eating things that literally their body cannot use in order to try. But the body is going to work miracles. It's going to do its best. It's going to literally, fake it as long as it can. It's gonna use those compromised materials. It's gonna use that burnt wood. It's gonna build the structure with the burnt wood because it's all you're giving it. And then it might approximate a living cell for a while, or may not. And so the fact of the matter is, eating protein does not build muscle. Building muscle is a combination of eating amino acids that have not been cooked from the fruit and the vegetable and the blue-green algae kingdoms, potentially, and then exercising, okay, every day, using your body physiologically in order so that your muscles will respond. Muscles, even just like bones, they need stress. Okay, they need to work. You've heard it before. You lose it, you don't use it, you lose it. And that's exactly right. Muscles atrophy. Anyone ever had surgery before and got laid up in the hospital for a couple of days? How did that feel on your muscles? I mean, how fast do they atrophy? Like 24 hours almost? It's unbelievable how fast your body will start to degrade itself when we stop using it. So That's the facts, okay? So number one, you do not fill yourself up from protein because that's fat, and we want to use plant fats, and we want them to be not cooked. And number two, you do not build muscle from protein. You build muscle from exercise, plus getting amino acids that have not been cooked into your system so that your body can use material that has structural integrity. So now we're coming to what is always one of my favorite parts here. I can't say that every part's not my favorite. I truly love talking about this stuff. I love, deconstructing these myths that are hurting people. I love talking about, how we can use these skills to make our life more fulfilling and more powerful, that we learn in the yoga and the meditation world, and the living enlightenment stuff. And then here now is again something that I feel so connected to for my whole life. I think those of you who remember me saying that this is a book that my mom gave me when I was 13 years old, year 12, and I'm still actually reading from exactly the same exact copy that she gave me. It's been a treasure of mine my whole life. So this is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and now today we're going to be talking about children. All right, so I'm going to continue on. This is, as you know now, I guess The Prophet, all of these chapters now are very short, maybe 2 minutes of reading at the most. Each chapter of The Prophet is on a different subject, and each chapter of The Prophet is really just about a page and a half at the most. And so here we continue on with The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and then afterwards, if I find myself inspired, then I will give a little commentary on it as well. Here we go. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you." I'll stop there for a moment because to me, that is, like I think we're going to find with this book from now on, almost every passage is so powerful and so profound that it has to get read again. So I'll read it again. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you, and though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. I'll continue. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. I'll repeat that. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might that his arrows may go swift and far. So you are the bow, but you are not the archer, and you are not the arrow, is what he's saying. I'll repeat that again. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he, capital He, bends you with his might that, capital His, arrows may go swift and far. Excuse me as I get emotional. I often do as I read this. I really honestly can't read this without tears welling up in my eyes, and of course happening as we speak now. This now closes with this final line. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he also loves the bow that is stable. So that's the passage on children by Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. And that concludes the episode 4 of the Fredcast. I hope you appreciated today. I certainly really appreciate you guys for listening. I just do my best to be as helpful and as effective for you as I can be. With a little bit that I know, and perhaps it can come to use in your life and in the life of your family, and that's the idea. So let's go out there and let's not take things personally. Let's eat more fruit. Let's let go of all these myths and all these people that are trying to hold us back so that they can profit from our misery, and let's take some time and read books like The Prophet. I recommend that you read it on your own. In addition to this Fredcast, which I will be covering the entire book. It's just a beautiful work. I think hopefully you're appreciating that as well. So signing off from episode 4 here of the Fredcast. Thank you guys so much. And here from Medellin Wellness Center in Colombia. I believe the next week I will be back in Miami. I'll be recording the program from Miami as I get ready to head to Peru. I'm going to be heading to Lima to conduct my yoga teacher training program down in Lima in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing it presentially. This means I'm going to be there in person. My first in-person program in quite a long time. So I'm very happy about that. We're also doing it virtually. So if you are anywhere around the world and you would like to join our teacher training course, which is not just about being a yoga teacher, but it's also about, learning all the different ways that you can, become a yoga practitioner and an expert in meditation and an expert in nutrition for your own benefit and for the benefit of your family, then it's certainly a very good idea as well to do the program. So please reach out to me anytime. Questions can go to my name, Fred Busch, FredBusch, at miamiyoga.com. I'll field all your questions. I appreciate the question from last week. And again, signing off from Medellin Wellness Center. Have a good morning, have a good afternoon, or have a good evening, wherever you are in the world.